you ever heard an old rotary phone ringing exactly at 3 in the morning? If it ever happens to you, please don't pick up. Some calls don't come from this world, and by the time you realize it, it might already be too late. This story took place in a small town near Springfield, deep in the heart of the United States, and those who know it still lower their voices when they speak of it. It all began with a young woman named Natalie Thompson. She was 26, worked at her family's bakery, and looked after her ailing grandmother. Her mother, who had passed away 5 years earlier, had meant everything to her. Every year on March 14th, Natalie visited the Hillside Memorial Cemetery, an old burial ground covered in twisted trees, damp moss, and cracked headstones worn by time. That day, she carried a bundle of white lilies in a cloth bag and walked slowly between the graves. The air felt thick, the sky grey. Not a single bird sang, no insects buzzed, not even a breeze stirred. The silence was so complete that even her footsteps seemed to shout against the gravel path. When she arrived, she stopped in front of her mother's grave. It was a modest stone, marked with a small iron cross. Natalie knelt down, brushed away the gathered dust, and placed the flowers gently. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered shakily, "I miss you, Mom. I'd give anything just to hear your voice again." That's when she saw it. Just a few feet away, beside a monument covered in dead vines, sat something completely out of place. An old telephone with a rotary dial and coiled cord. It was half buried in dirt, yet oddly intact. It didn't look like an offering or a decoration. It just didn't belong. As she stepped closer, a chill ran down her spine. She glanced around and noticed 2 women seated by a nearby crypt. They wore long black dresses from another era and stared blankly into the distance. Natalie politely asked if they knew who the phone belonged to. Both turned their heads at the same time and murmured in unison, "That phone should never be touched." But Natalie didn't understand, or chose not to. She thought, if no one claims it, it's not stealing. She pulled a plastic bag from her coat pocket and tucked the phone inside. If you love horror stories too, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Die! With that thought in mind, she left the cemetery and headed home, unaware she had just opened a door that should have stayed shut. On her way back, Natalie couldn't stop glancing at the bag containing the dusty phone. Each time the bus hit a bump, she felt as if the object lightly vibrated, like it was alive. "I'm imagining things," she told herself. Still, her heartbeat pounded unnaturally hard. Once home, in her small green duplex in the Ridgewood neighborhood, she placed the bag on the dining table and went to shower. The hot water did nothing to ease her tension. It felt like something had followed her from the cemetery. Stepping out, she noticed the bag had tipped over, and the phone was now on the table, spotless, not a speck of dirt, as if someone had polished it. She touched it cautiously. It was cold, but didn't feel old. The rotary dial spun smoothly. The receiver had an odd weight to it, and though it wasn't connected to anything, it felt like it was waiting to ring. That night, Natalie skipped dinner. She locked herself in her bedroom, shut all the windows and played soft music on her phone, trying to distract herself. But despite being exhausted, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face reaching out from an open grave. At exactly 3 a.m., she jolted awake. It wasn't a sound that disturbed her, but a sensation, like something was pulling her soul toward the living room. Barefoot and trembling, she crept out. When she turned on the light, she froze. The phone was out of the bag, placed dead center on the table, and it was ringing. A sharp, metallic, insistent ring, unlike any modern ringtone. It was a sound from another time. Natalie stumbled backward, tripping over a chair. She grabbed her phone. The screen showed a message, "Do not answer," and beneath it, a call from an unknown number. 03 a.m. The ringing wouldn't stop. She slowly approached, hands trembling. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something in her mind, a gentle voice, whispered, "Just one call, just once." She picked up the receiver and raised it to her ear. "Hello?" On the other end, a barely audible voice replied, "It's me, sweetheart. I'm coming for you. I've missed you so much." Her blood turned to ice. That voice, it was her mother's. But it didn't sound alive. It sounded like it came from a place where flesh no longer exists. And just before she could hang up, another voice whispered, low, raspy, as if dragging its lungs to speak, "You should have never brought me home." Natalie dropped the handset so hard it slid across the floor. It didn't break, not a scratch, but her entire body shivered with an internal cold, like something had entered her. That voice couldn't be real, yet it matched her mother's perfectly. The way she spoke, the way she said her name, and that was the most disturbing part. Only family ever called her that. She returned to her room, locked the door, and pulled a blanket over herself, as if it could protect her. The final whisper still echoed in her head. "You should have never brought me home." She didn't sleep, just waited for daylight with eyes wide open. And when the sun finally shone through the curtains, it felt like it had all been a nightmare. But as she stepped out of her room, the phone was still there, untouched, silent, whole. During the day, Natalie tried to act normal. She went to work at the bakery, greeted her neighbors, even forced a few smiles. But inside, something had shifted. It was like an invisible shadow clung to her. She saw strange reflections in shop windows, figures that vanished when she turned her head. And several times she thought she heard her name spoken in a faint, dragging voice. At home, she avoided looking at the phone. She covered it with a towel, stuffed it in a box, sealed it with tape, and shoved it into the closet, placing a chair on top. It was absurd, yes, but something told her it wasn't enough, and it wasn't. At exactly 3 a.m., the phone rang again, this time from inside the closet. Natalie woke up drenched in sweat. The sound was sharper, more urgent, like a desperate cry twisted into a ring. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed a candle, and knelt in front of the closet, tears streaming down her face. She didn't want to answer. She knew she shouldn't. But what if it really was her mother? What if she was trapped somewhere? Mustering every ounce of courage, she opened the box. The phone was inside, vibrating despite not being plugged in. She lifted the receiver with shaking hands. Silence. Then a breath, slow, deep. "Mom," a voice replied, different from before, drier, more distant. "You called me first. Now I'm coming for you." Natalie screamed and threw the phone across the room. It crashed against the wall and dropped to the floor, but it didn't break. Instead, it started ringing again, this time playing an old tune, a lullaby twisted by age and static. From that moment on, Natalie knew something had crossed over with her from the cemetery, and it had no intention of leaving. After that third call, Natalie could no longer tell whether she was awake or trapped in an endless dream. Days passed, but everything felt shrouded in a dense fog, like her mind was losing its grip on time and space. She tried to carry on with her routine, but each step took effort. Customers spoke to her at the bakery, and she barely understood them. She walked down the street and noticed how the streetlights flickered when she passed. And most unsettling of all, every time she looked into a mirror or shop window, she saw a figure standing behind her. Still, dark, eyes closed, as if waiting for the perfect moment to open them. One afternoon, when Natalie returned home, she found all the windows wide open, even though she had locked them before leaving. There was no sign of a break-in. Nothing appeared to be missing or out of place, except for one thing, the phone. It was now resting on her bed, its cord neatly coiled, as if someone had placed it there with care. Natalie didn't touch it. She only stared, frozen in fear, holding back tears. That night, as she struggled to sleep, she heard a soft voice humming from the hallway. A childlike lullaby, broken and muffled, as if sung through a mouth full of dirt. Natalie got up and walked toward the sound. When she reached the living room, the television turned on by itself, a black screen, no image. Just a trembling message in white letters, "You are not alone anymore." She slowly backed away, and then the phone began to ring, but not its usual ring. This time, it sounded like whispers were pouring out of the receiver. overlapping voices, all saying her name in different tones, as if multiple versions of her mother were trying to speak to her at once. Natalie dropped to her knees, covering her ears, sobbing. But the voices weren't outside, they were inside her head. In the days that followed, everything worsened. Cracks began to appear on the walls with no explanation. Lights burst one after another. The oven turned on by itself at exactly 3 in the morning. And every time Natalie tried to leave the house, something stopped her. Her body would freeze at the doorway as if an unseen force was holding her back. That's when she decided to call someone. She needed help. She thought of Adam, her boyfriend, though they hadn't spoken in months due to an old fight. Nervously, fearing she'd sound insane, she dialed his number. But the moment he heard her trembling voice, he knew something was terribly wrong. "I'm coming over," he said without hesitation. That same night, Adam arrived. He knocked, and Natalie opened the door, eyes swollen, voice shaking. He didn't ask questions, he just held her. But as he stepped inside, he felt something. The hair on his neck stood up, and when he looked into the living room, the phone was staring back at him. Adam had never been superstitious. He was rational, grounded. But the second he crossed the threshold of Natalie's home, he felt wrapped in something ancient and damp, like humidity that sank into his bones. The air smelled of rotting flowers and soaked wood. The lights flickered, and though the windows were closed, the curtains swayed as if someone was breathing behind them. Natalie whispered everything: the phone, the calls, the voices, the TV messages, the constant feeling of not being alone. Adam listened wide-eyed, trying to stay calm. When she mentioned that the voice sounded like her mother's, a chill crawled up his spine. He remembered the funeral clearly. He had seen her in the casket. That was undeniable. So how could this be happening? Together, they walked into the living room. The phone sat dead center on the table, like a cursed relic waiting for its time. Adam approached and studied it, a 1950s rotary model, in flawless condition. He placed a finger on the dial to spin it, and felt a jolt of electricity shoot up his arm. "Don't touch it," Natalie whispered, eyes wide with dread. They decided to box it up, an old shoebox, layers of plastic bags, and stash it inside the oven, which didn't work. But at 3 o'clock, sharp, the ringing returned from inside the oven. That same twisted melody. That night, Adam slept on the couch, and Natalie stayed in her room with the door locked. At 3:17 a.m., Adam was woken by a whisper, not from the phone, from the hallway. He sat up slowly and walked to Natalie's room. He opened the door gently and saw her standing in front of the mirror, speaking to no one. "Mom, I know, but I can't leave yet." She paused. "Yes, I'll bring him with me." Adam stepped back without a sound and returned to the sofa. He didn't sleep again. The next day, determined to understand what was happening, he rummaged through Natalie's old notebooks and photo albums. In a school journal from when she was 6, he found something that made his blood run cold. A drawing made with red and black crayons. It showed an old rotary phone, identical to the one in her home, and beside it, a faceless female figure with a crooked sentence scribbled above, "She calls me every night." The drawing was dated March 2003. Natalie had no memory of creating it. That's when Adam realized this wasn't a coincidence. Something had come back with her from the cemetery, or maybe it had always been waiting for her. Tap the yellow lamp icon and stay with us, so together we can uncover disturbing mysteries. The nights were no longer silent. Natalie's house no longer slept. In the darkness, slow footsteps echoed down the hallway, deep breaths sounded behind closed doors, and a constant whisper hummed like words dragged from the bottom of a well. The phone, despite being sealed in a box, kept making itself known. It rang non-stop. Sometimes they'd find it outside the box, in impossible places, on top of the fridge, in the bathroom, in the seat of Adam's car. Always clean, always untouched. Adam tried to explain it all rationally. He installed cameras in the living room and bedroom, motion sensors, but every recording was corrupted at 3 a.m. A high-pitched screech would overwhelm the audio, and the image would go black. Once, they managed to recover a single frame, a female silhouette standing in front of the camera, head tilted, arms hanging like rags. She didn't move, just stood there, watching. One night, while Natalie slept soundly for the first time in days, Adam heard the oven ignite by itself. He ran to the kitchen and saw the blue flame lit for no reason. He quickly turned off the gas. On the oven door were finger marks, as if someone had tried to escape from inside. Back in the bedroom, he found Natalie sitting up in bed, her eyes open, but hollow. She was murmuring a word he didn't recognize over and over, like in a trance. Catalina, Catalina, Catalina. When he touched her, she let out a terrible scream and began convulsing. Her body arched, her nails dug into the sheets. Adam held her, terrified, unsure what to do. She opened her eyes wide and spoke words he would never forget. "She wants you to stay with us." Then she passed out. The next morning, Natalie remembered nothing. She said she felt exhausted, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Desperate, Adam began searching for any trace of Catalina. Online, in town records, in old newspaper archives. He discovered that in the 1940s, a woman named Catalina Moore had been accused of witchcraft in that same area. She was found dead in her home, surrounded by old telephones, with a smile drawn in blood across her face. Everything pointed to one fact. The phone Natalie had found in the cemetery had belonged to Catalina. And with each passing day, Natalie looked more like the woman from the video. Her movements slowed, her voice grew softer, her eyes lost their light. Adam knew he was losing her. And worse, he felt someone else was living inside her body. Adam couldn't stand by. He felt something was stealing Natalie away from him, piece by piece, and if he didn't act soon, there would be nothing left of the woman he loved. He decided to return to Hillside Memorial Cemetery, where it all began. It was a cloudy morning, and the wind howled unnaturally, as if the very air tried to keep him away. There, he searched for the groundskeeper, an elderly man with deep-set wrinkles named Mr. Harris. When Adam told him what was happening, the man stayed silent for several minutes. Then, with a grave tone, he said, "That phone doesn't belong in this time." Mr. Harris explained that even in his youth, stories were told of the black phone, an object that appeared and vanished in different parts of town. Some believed it was a bridge between the living and the dead. Others claimed it was bait, a trap to steal souls. But all agreed on one thing: whoever heard it ring at 3:00 a.m. was marked. Adam pressed for more answers. Mr. Harris led him to a forgotten crypt, hidden among overgrown vines and decades-abandoned graves. He showed him a tombstone with a nearly erased name: Catalina Moore, 1912-1947. Dried flowers littered the ground, and carved into the stone was a strange symbol, a circle, a phone in the center, and an inverted cross piercing through it. She died right here, but it wasn't suicide. They say she made contact with something she never should have. Adam took a picture of the grave. Before he left, Mr. Harris gave him one final warning: if she's spoken to you, you're already part of it. Adam returned home with dread in his chest. Natalie sat in the living room staring blankly. In her hands, she held the phone. Even though Adam was sure he had hidden it, she spoke without blinking. "She's coming, my love. She said she wants to meet you." Adam stepped back. That wasn't Natalie's voice. It was deeper, slower, emotionless, cold. He ran to the kitchen and grabbed a small bottle of holy water his mother had left him long ago. He sprinkled a few drops on the phone. Natalie screamed with an inhuman force and collapsed unconscious. That night, Adam dreamed of a dark place where thousands of phones rang all at once. In the middle of them sat Natalie, her eyes sewn shut, dialing the same number over and over. When he woke, she was gone, and worst of all, the phone was resting on his chest, still warm, as if someone had just used it. From that night on, Adam noticed that Natalie no longer acted like herself. She slept during the day, and when night fell, she moved slowly. as if waking from centuries of slumber. Her once vibrant eyes had dulled, and most disturbing of all, her skin began to show dark spots, like burns appearing for no reason. One early morning, while making coffee to stay awake, Adam heard her pacing through the house. The sound wasn't normal. It was dragged, uneven. When he peeked into the hallway, he saw her standing in front of the mirror, brushing her hair with agonizing slowness. But what left him breathless was the reflection. It wasn't her face in the glass. It was another woman, a thin figure with tangled hair and a crooked smile. Catalina. Natalie? He asked, his voice trembling. She turned slightly, her expression blank, and replied in a raspy voice, "She's gone, but you can stay with me." Adam stumbled backward, tripping over a chair and crashing to the floor. Natalie walked toward him, each step cracking like splintering wood. He tried to get up and run, but when he turned toward the door, it slammed shut. The house was trapping him. He darted into the bathroom, locked the door and collapsed to the floor, hands shaking. He pulled out his phone and dialed emergency services. The call dropped after one ring. A notification appeared on his screen. Too late. Now you've heard it too. On the other side of the door, Natalie began to laugh, a hollow, echoing sound no human throat should be able to produce. Then silence, complete, suffocating silence. He waited long minutes, frozen, before finally opening the door. The house was empty, no sign of her. Everything was in place, as if nothing had happened. But then he noticed her bedroom door slightly ajar. He peeked inside and froze. Natalie was sitting on the bed completely nude, her body covered in dark branching scars that writhed beneath her skin like living roots. Her eyes were pure white. She was smiling, and in her hands the phone vibrated gently, glowing with a faint yellow light. "Adam, now you can hear her too." Before he could react, the room's light exploded. A shriek pierced the air, sharp and layered like 1,000 voices screaming in unison. Everything went black. He woke hours later on the floor. Natalie was gone. No signs of struggle, only a damp patch of earth where she had been, and the phone right next to his face. This time, it wasn't ringing. This time, it seemed to be watching him. Adam sat up, his head throbbing and his chest hollow with grief he couldn't explain. The house was silent. The phone was gone. Natalie too. Everything was clean, orderly, as if someone had erased every trace of her during the night. He searched the drawers, the closet, the bathroom. Her toothbrush, perfume, clothes, gone. Even the photo of them together, where she smiled in his arms, now showed only the couch, empty. He thought he was losing his mind. He grabbed his phone and dialed her number. User unavailable. He checked her social media. Her profile was gone. He scrolled through old photos. None had her face. It was as if Natalie had never existed, as if time had swallowed her whole. Desperate, Adam ran to the police station in downtown Springfield. He explained that his partner had vanished. The officer on duty, annoyed, asked for her full name. When he said Natalie Thompson, the cop frowned. "Are you kidding me, sir? There's no one by that name registered in this city. Not now, not in the last 5 years. Adam pleaded, begged, showed recovered photos from his cloud storage, but in every one, the space where Natalie should have been was blurry or empty. They referred him to a psychiatric clinic in Oak Ridge. There, a young doctor listened carefully without judgment. After Adam finished his story, the doctor sighed. "You're not the first to mention someone named Natalie or the phone, but there are no official records, no medical history, no birth certificate. What you experienced, others have too, always with slight differences, but one detail is always the same. The call happens at exactly 3 a.m. Adam left the clinic more confused than ever. He wandered the streets for hours until he reached Hillside Memorial Cemetery. He knelt at the grave of Natalie's mother, searching for some comfort, but what he found paralyzed him. A new headstone, fresh flowers. The name carved in the stone read, Natalie Thompson, 1997-2024. You should never have answered. The world stopped spinning. Adam fell to his knees, speechless. Tears poured from his eyes. and just as the wind howled, something tumbled from the flowers. The phone, black, untouched. Perfect, and on its screen, a single word written in ancient script, "You're next." Adam stared at the device. It didn't ring, it didn't vibrate. It just waited, watching. Because sometimes what truly terrifies us isn't what we hear, but what still remains in silence. Days later, Adam left the city. He packed what little he had and fled to his grandfather's old home on the outskirts of Fairview. He needed to escape from the story, from the grave, from the phone, but most of all, from the guilt. He spent his days in silence, avoiding his phone, avoiding people. He tried to convince himself that it had all been stress, the madness of grief. But deep down, he knew the truth. Natalie had been real. He had loved her, and now something had taken her. One night, while walking through the backyard, he heard a metallic sound inside the house. A chime, dry, cold, unmistakable. He ran inside, trembling. And there, on the wooden table, sat the one thing he feared most, the same black phone. He hadn't brought it. He didn't know how it got there, but there it was. He grabbed a blanket, wrapped it tightly, and threw it down the well in the garden. He heard the thud as it hit the bottom. Then, nothing. For the first time in weeks, he slept. Until exactly 3 a.m., his cell phone vibrated. A video call from an unknown number. The screen was black, but in the center, a blurry silhouette moved. He pressed the decline button. Nothing happened. The image sharpened. A woman's figure, eyes sewn shut, a trembling smile. Natalie. Her distorted voice came through the speaker. "I told you. Now you can hear me." The phone from the well began to ring. From that moment on, Adam vanished. His car was found parked in the town square of Maplewood. Inside, there was only dirt, handprints on the windows, and an old rotary phone on the passenger seat. The local police closed the case as voluntary disappearance, but the locals tell another story. Since then, that same phone has been spotted in various places: bus stations, abandoned hospitals, empty classrooms, even in vacant homes. It's never plugged in, always spotless, and it only needs one thing to activate, someone to touch it. When that happens, it rings. Those who answer first hear gentle voices, familiar, comforting. Then they hear their own thoughts whispered back to them through the receiver, and after that, they simply vanish. No one knows who first left the phone. No one knows how to stop it. All that's known is this: if you ever see it, and it's 3 a.m., it doesn't matter if you're alone or not, if it feels real or just like a dream, don't answer. Because if you do, the next horror story we tell might be yours.